Alright guys, so I recently did a video about how the Phenom II 6-core was still a decent gaming CPU, and then right after that, Red Dead Redemption 2 happened. Someone had asked me on that video if the game would even start on that CPU on the Phenom 2, and honestly I didn't know. The only thing I could do was buy the game and find out, since it currently seems to be the most talked about game. I was also curious how it would run on older hardware, so I'm also going to try to run a Radeon HD 7790. It's a 2GB GPU, just to see, if we can get it to run at least 30 FPS. The minimum requirements for the game, they specifically call for an FX 6300 and AMD R9 280 GPU on the AMD side. Alright, installation is done, so let's find out if it works. So, after trying everything and a bunch of failed attempts, I decided to give it the best chance of working by reducing the graphics settings as low as possible. As you can see here, it's running in windowed mode, 720p, and I'm setting all these settings as low as they can go. So it ends up crashing with this error every single time, which makes me believe the CPU is just not capable of running this game. If you look in CPU-Z under the instructions, you notice there are some more modern instructions missing. If you compare it to the FX CPU, you'll notice it supports a lot more instructions. So we're going to use the FX here in the HD 7790. And we'll have the minimum CPU and just below the minimum GPU. If we want to play at 1080p with somewhat decent looking graphics and a playable frame rate, can we make this happen? Well, we're certainly going to try. So right off the bat, I want to get it back to full screen and just make sure that it even works on the CPU. Unfortunately, the settings will lock you out of applying any changes if you're over the or above the allotted video memory, so we need to contend with that first. If I lower the resolution scale down to half, the memory falls below the specified amount, the bar under it turns white, and then changes can be applied. So back into the settings, and we see that we can't change the resolution scale up from half and apply it, so it's time to edit a config file and hope that that works. The file I'm editing is under Documents, Rockstar Games, Red Dead Redemption 2, Settings, and it's the XML file called System. If you right click on it, you can select Open with Notepad, and it shows all the settings that we set in the settings screen. Reading through all these settings here, I'm looking for something pertaining to resolution scaling. And it turns out it's this setting here called scaling mode. So I'm going to assume that I need to change this to what looks to be the highest setting in the game graphics settings. I'll check later to see if we can just make them both 1, so it'll be like 1 to 1. And but for now, I'm going to make them 29 and 30. After making changes, click File at the top, then Save and close the file. Let's see if these settings remain. Okay, great. Everything is as we said it, so let's go ahead and see if this works. Okay, so it worked, but honestly, the rest of the benchmark just looked horrible, especially the shadows and the foliage. So let's see if we can increase the graphics quality and still remain around 30 FPS. From the graphics settings tab, we won't be able to change anything unless we reduce the scaling again, so we'll start there and we'll just tweak some settings and try to stay under the memory allotment. If not, then we can always change some of them in the XML file later. You can see how some of the settings affect the memory usage and some don't. We'll set a few, then we'll go back, we'll edit the XML file for the resolution scaling. Alright, so I'm going to set these both to 1 this time, so it'll be a 1-to-1 scale, and that should be 100% resolution scaling. Alright, all the settings have stuck, resolution scaling's off, so let's see if it looks any better. To be honest, it does look a lot better, especially the foliage and the shadows. I realize that, it doesn't look great, but it looks way better than it did before, and I think, if you have older hardware, this is perfectly playable. I think, you could still increase some of the textures better in the XML file, and maybe reduce some of the other settings, just to make it look better without dropping too many frames. And while this is just an in-game benchmark, it does seem to be keeping right near at 30 FPS at these settings, which really isn't bad for a brand new game that just might be 2019's version of Crysis, and it's running on older hardware. I think if you spend some time really doing some tweaking with the settings, maybe set a slightly lower resolution scale, this can be improved. You know, it can be improved to still look better and still keep a pretty consistent 30 FPS. Sadly, while the Phenom 2 is still a decent performer for most games, I think the trend is coming where it's going to pretty quickly become irrelevant. Apex Legends won't run on it, and now one of the most popular games to come along in quite a while won't run on it, and I think that's going to be the final coffin nail for the CPU. If I'm wrong and any of you guys have managed to get Red Dead 2 to run on a Phenom, let me know below, but I'm not very optimistic. The system will be retaining the FX 6300 since it's in the process of being sold, and I'm sure the new owner is going to want to check out this game, and the Phenom will be relegated to a shelf for now. Anywho, I hope this answers some questions for someone. If anyone has any other questions, just give a shout, and I think I'm going to test this game out on a 2400G next, so stay tuned for that. Thanks guys, and stay warm.